Kris Jenner doesn't really talk about her biological father too much, and there's definitely a reason why. Welcome back to Mary Jo Part 2, where we're diving into the amazing, extraordinary life of Mary Jo Shannon while we mourn her as well. When we last left off, Mary Jo had just gotten her first divorce to her high school sweetheart at 18 years old. The year was 1952, and Mary Jo was 18 years old. Also, I don't even have to say much. How is this fair? She was so gorgeous. And the cigarette, period. Only 2 years after her first divorce, at 20 years old, Mary Jo would meet Kris's father, Robert True Houghton, I believe is how you say that. Robert True Houghton. And yes, Kris's biological father's name is Robert, who she would go on to later marry. Also, side note, literally same thing happened to me. I've never met my biological father. However, he has the same name as my husband now. So Kris, I get it. Also, Robert's middle name, True, is of course where Chloe got the name for her daughter, True. It was actually suggested by Kim at her baby shower. Robert and MJ would get together and get married in 1954, and very shortly after, Mary Jo would find herself pregnant with her first child. And on November 5th, 1955, she would give birth to Kristen Mary Houghton. Then, 3 years later, she would give birth to another baby girl, Karen Casey Houghton. Look how adorable they are. Kris recalls her childhood as being one that someone could only dream of. It was the typical 1950s, 60s upbringing, just the perfect little life. Robert was an engineer for Convair, which was an aircraft design manufacturing company. Meanwhile, Mary Jo and Robert lived in Point Loma, which is an area in San Diego. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that wrong. And Kris describes where they lived at as a big, beautiful white house like you see in the movies. Kris also states that she and Karen were extremely close growing up despite their little differences that they had. By differences, Kris described that Karen had light brown hair while she had jet black hair, but that's obviously not what she's talking about. She's talking about the fact that Kris was extremely chatty, extremely social growing up, whereas Karen was very much more reserved and almost shy. And that makes a lot of sense later on when we don't see Karen on the show. We'll get into all that later, but just so you have to know, these two are super tight despite being a little bit different in personalities. Unfortunately for Kris, for MJ, for Karen, their perfect life kind of came to an end in 1962. Kris says it started out one day of just one argument, and then slowly but surely it snowballed into just having arguments all of the time. So one night when Kris was 7 years old, Robert went in his room and he packed his bags and he said he was going away but that he would return. And Kris states that's how you basically told children about a divorce back in the day, because Robert unfortunately did not return and the two would get a divorce. But despite the divorce, Kris says that for a while he was still very involved in their lives until the business that Robert worked for, Convair, they moved to Long Beach. And Kris says that once they moved to Long Beach, they took their father right along with it. And from then on, they barely saw Robert. He would call here and there, send letters every now and again, but he was not active in their lives anymore. And that's probably why we don't hear a lot about him, to be honest. But Kris praises her mother, especially around the time that she was getting a divorce. She praises her for her admirable strength, her courage, and her determination to make sure her daughters had the best life despite her being a single mom, which once again was pretty uncommon during the 60s. Kris says that Mary Jo moved herself and her two girls from Point Loma to Claremont, where Mary Jo's parents, Lou Ethel and Jim, lived. Kris recalls that Mary Jo bought a 1956 T-Bird convertible and used to throw Kris and Karen in the back of it, drive to the beach in La Jolla, hang out with her girlfriends, and just have the most amazing beach days. But that wasn't all. She took Kris and Karen to do fun activities all of the time. And even throughout all of this, Kris states that Mary Jo was working full-time and that she loved to work, and that's where Kris absolutely gets her love for working too. On top of Mary Jo helping out at her mother's candelabra shop, she had various other jobs that she worked in order to make sure that her and her girls stayed afloat. The job that Kris remembers the most that Mary Jo worked was at a pro shop at a golf course. But like I said, she worked so many other ones. While working full-time and taking care of her girls, Kris also recalls that her mother stayed dressed to the nines, like most women did in this era. She says she had the gloves, the dresses, the hats, the cinch corsets, the matching outfits, the drama. Kris states that even while doing house chores and making dinner, she was still dressed to impress. Like I said, MJ was just that girl, okay? Hello. Then, around 1967, MJ would meet Harry Shannon. Harry was a yacht broker and he taught his clients how to sail. And Kris states she knew Harry had money because Harry, much like MJ, was also super into fashion as well. Kris recalls that Harry would walk around in fabulous white linen slacks, jackets, and fabulous loafers. She also recalls that Harry was an excellent sailor and a great businessman as well. Kris says he was, quote, the coolest, most beautiful dresser. He always looked like a Ralph Lauren ad. And Kris recalls that Harry was so in love with Mary Jo. And of course, she was in love with him too. It sounds like the two had a lot in common. Come on. Oh my God, this picture is gonna make me cry. Okay, anyway, Mary Jo and Harry were super in love right from the get-go. And it was honestly a match made in heaven. Kris loved him. Karen loved him. Her family loved him. He just fit right in. However, there was a little issue that was going on, and it was that Harry Shannon was an alcoholic, as Kris recalls. So in the next part, we're going to get into how Mary Jo and Harry were able to overcome that, and then Mary Jo's third marriage to Harry.